The restaurant was quiet, except for the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware. At a corner table sat Lucas Hale, billionaire CEO of Hale Industries, his phone buzzing non-stop as his 6-year-old daughter Lily sat across from him, swinging her legs and trying to get his attention. "Daddy, look," she said, holding up a crayon drawing, but he didn't look up. "Not yet." "Sweetheart, I'm finishing something important." She nodded quietly, staring down at her half-eaten food. The waitress approached with a gentle smile, noticing the girl's silence. She leaned down. "That's beautiful, sweetie. What's it a picture of?" Lily smiled shyly. "It's me and Daddy at the park, but we never go there anymore." Lucas looked up for the first time, his chest tightening, but he masked it with a forced smile. "She's creative," he said. The waitress nodded softly. "Kids draw what they miss most, sir." Then she walked away. Lily went back to coloring, her voice barely a whisper. "It's okay, Daddy, we can leave if you're busy." The words hit harder than any boardroom insult he'd ever faced. She wasn't angry. She was resigned, and that broke something in him. He reached across the table, taking her tiny hand, but she smiled politely like a stranger and said, "Maybe next time you'll have time." That night back in his penthouse, the silence was deafening. The city lights stretched endlessly outside, but he couldn't stop replaying her words. "It's okay, Daddy." We can leave. His phone buzzed again, but for the first time in years he didn't answer. He stared at Lily's crayon drawing instead, 2 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun, and something inside him whispered that all the wealth in the world couldn't buy back. A single lost moment. Lucas sat in his office the next morning, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows and the low murmur of his team, but his mind wasn't there. Every chart, every deal, every voice blurred together in meaningless noise he kept hearing. Her small voice over and over. "It's okay, Daddy, we can leave for the first time in years." He didn't feel powerful, he felt hollow. His assistant knocked. "Sir, your 10 o'clock meeting is waiting." He nodded mechanically. "Tell them to start without me." They stared, surprised, but did as told. He walked to the window, looking down at the busy city below. People rushing everywhere, chasing something they'd never have time to enjoy. That afternoon, instead of heading to another meeting, he drove to Lily's school. Her teacher looked surprised when he showed up during art class. She pointed to the back of the room, where Lily sat alone, painting quietly, her tiny fingers covered in blue and yellow paint. She looked up in shock when she saw him. "Daddy, what are you doing here?" He smiled softly. "I had a little time today, thought I'd see what my favorite artist was working on." She grinned, running into his arms, the scent of crayons and paint filling the air when she showed him her painting. A park with a bright sky and 2 people holding balloons. He felt a lump rise in his throat. "Is this us?" She nodded proudly. "We're finally going to the park. Like you promised, right?" He swallowed hard and said, "Yes, sweetheart. We are. Tomorrow I'll clear my whole day for you." That evening he sat alone in his office long after everyone left, staring at the company logo on the wall, and for the first time in his career he wondered what any of it meant. The deals, the pressure, the endless race for more. He looked down at Lily's drawing resting on his desk and whispered, "Maybe it's time to build something that actually matters." The next morning, the city woke up to news that sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Lucas Hale, the billionaire CEO, had cancelled every meeting and shut down operations for an entire day. Employees flooded the building, confused and whispering rumors, but Lucas didn't care. For the first time in years, he didn't wear a suit. He walked into the office in jeans, carrying a backpack and holding Lily's tiny hand. She looked around amazed. "Daddy, everyone's staring," he smiled. "Let them. Maybe they'll see what really matters." He gathered his entire staff in the main atrium, people expecting an announcement about a merger or another acquisition. Instead, he stood on the small stage, clearing his throat. "You've all worked harder than any team I've ever known, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that we're not machines. We're people." He paused, glancing down at Lily, who watched him proudly from the front row. "Today we're closing for one reason, family. You all have one somewhere, and I want you to go home to them. Not your desks, not your screens." Murmurs spread through the crowd, and a few people even laughed, thinking it was a joke, until they realized he was serious. "The building will stay dark for the next 24 hours. He continued, "Take the time to be with the people who make you who you are, because if you lose that, You lose everything when... He stepped off the stage. Employees approached him quietly, some thanking him, some in tears. One man said, "I haven't seen my kids in 3 days because of this job." Lucas looked him in the eyes, then said, "Go home right now. Tell them you love them," before they stopped waiting to hear it. That afternoon, Lucas and Lily went to the park for the first time in years. She ran barefoot through the grass, laughing as he chased her, pretending to fall. She stopped beside him, giggling. "Daddy, you're not very fast anymore," he smiled, lying back under the sun. "Maybe I just needed a reason to slow down," she laughed, tossing a handful of grass at him. "Maybe I'm your reason." He looked at her with misty eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, you always were." That night, the city skyline shimmered outside Lucas's penthouse, but inside it felt nothing like before. The air wasn't filled with phone calls or screens flashing with numbers. It was filled with the sound of Lily's laughter as she built a blanket fort across the living room. He helped her drape a sheet over 2 chairs, pretending it was a castle. She climbed inside, grinning. "Daddy, you can be the king, but only if you stay here tonight." He smiled softly. "You've got yourself a deal, princess." After she fell asleep inside her tiny fortress, he sat nearby, watching her breathing peacefully for the first time in forever. He felt still. He walked over to his desk where he had once stacked contracts and reports. Now it held just one piece of paper, Lily's crayon drawing, the one that started it all. He picked it up, smiling, 2 stick figures holding hands under a sun, with messy yellow rays written above it in crooked letters, "Me and Daddy finally together." The next morning, his assistant entered to find Lucas dressed casually with Lily by his side. "I'm moving my office home for now," he said simply. The assistant blinked. "So what about the company?" He smiled. "The company will survive. I just realized I haven't been living." He placed his phone in a drawer and added quietly, "Tell the board family time isn't an excuse anymore. It's a policy." Weeks passed and the changes spread. Employees noticed a new culture. Meetings ended earlier. Dinners were spent with families instead of clients. Productivity didn't drop, it grew because people felt human again. And every time someone thanked him, Lucas would just smile and say, "I should be thanking my daughter. She taught me what success really looks like." One evening as the sun set, he sat with Lily on a park bench. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Daddy, are you happy now?" He looked down at her, his voice warm and steady. "Happier than I've ever been." She smiled, closing her eyes. "Good. I like this version of you." He laughed quietly, wrapping his arm around her as the sky turned gold, and for the first time in years he didn't think about tomorrow. He just lived the moment he almost lost. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.